We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
Yes, I'm wearing this jersey to South Bend. I'm going to. You're going to be the only one with the crew that's going to be in Dame gear, because we rep UC. We rep the 513.
You can drive yourself up there. You can figure out your own way to South Bend if that's going to be the case. I get these tickets for you guys, and you're paying me by cheering for Cincinnati.
Oh, what do you mean get the? Oh, I guess you did get them at face value.
Yeah,
well, it's gonna be a fun game. Maybe you can convince me to wear the Dame jersey I got, but right now I'm leaning Travis Kelce 18, and I think I have to. Cincinnati favored by 2 in that game. Are you betting Dame?
No, I'm not betting Dame. I've said all year that Cincinnati's the much better team. I thought that was the case against Indiana when they ended up winning by 2 scores there. I don't trust Notre Dame to be able to move the ball. I flat out don't. I was there in-house last week watching them get owned by Wisconsin's defense and struggled to do anything offensively, even though they put up 41 points. 3 of those were non-offensive scores. So, yeah, I think 2 is a soft line there, even in
really
Notre Dame Stadium. I would bet the other side.
I was surprised when it opened at 2, Cincinnati favored on the road in South Bend, that bettors did not bet it down to Notre Dame favor, because Notre Dame at home. I was surprised by that. I thought more people would be jumping on board with the
They've watched Notre
Irish.
Dame apparently, but
also the quarterback injury, right? How battered is Jack Cohn?
Honestly, I'm not sure it matters with the way he played last week, so we shall see.
Could matter more if the backups play. Reminder that PFF Tailgate is going to South Bend. Make sure to hit us up. We got a lot of fans in Chicago. Hit us up in South Bend. Make sure to follow PFF_tailgate on Twitter. If you do, you can leave messages in the DMs to get on our mailbag episode on Thursdays. Getting into this one, can we get a Monday Night Football recap? Jalen Hurts did not look all that great. Defensively, there were some lapses outside of maybe Javon Hargrave. Hargrave continues to go on a tear. Only one player in the NFL along the interior defensive line has a better pass rushing grade than Javon Hargrave, and that's Aaron Donald. That's how good he's been this year. Had a strip sack in this one that Fletcher Cox recovered for a touchdown, but that was kind of the lone bright spot for this Eagles team. Offensively, they struggled to get anything going, and defensively, Dak Prescott ripped them up.
Yeah, that game wasn't really close. Like, it really wasn't. It took a maybe blown call at the goal line to take away a touchdown from Dallas, and then a fumble in their own end zone to give a touchdown to the Eagles to keep it a 20-point game.
Fair.
So it was really not the Eagles were just overmatched on both sides of the ball, and it was kind of the issues we talked about with Hurts. Like, that pick in the end zone or near the end zone, right at the 1-yard line or whatever, was just an awful throw. A throw you can't underthrow a guy by that much. And yeah, Rager didn't help him out by playing a little defense, but man, both picks, in my opinion, were pretty rough and really cost the Eagles that game.
I love how well Trayvon Diggs is getting received in the media so far. Only player in the NFL with 3 interceptions or an interception in every game so far this season. Obviously jumped that speed out for pick 6 in this one. How impressed have you been with Trayvon Diggs' second-year development?
Yeah, I mean, he's always, even still, he is a boomer bust type of cornerback. He is that guy who you're going to live with giving up big plays, because when he wins on a ball or when he wins on a route, it's a pick, it's a pass breakup, it's him taking the guy out of the progression at the line of scrimmage. Like, he is capable of those high-end plays that you can give up in today's day and age. Like, you're going to give up points. No one's going to be a complete shutdown corner. So you live with the lows of Trayvon Diggs for pick sixes like that.
He was also super chirpy against Devontae Smith, super physical at the line of scrimmage. There's a rep if you watch. I don't think Devontae Smith was targeted on the route, but he lines up in press coverage, and right at the snap, literally jumps across the line of scrimmage and like punches him in the chest. And Devontae Smith kind of gets blown off the route. It was pretty impressive from Trayvon Diggs being that physical and also chirping a bit against his former teammate.
That was insane that on if you were watching the Manicast, you had an Alabama quarterback throwing to an Alabama wide receiver and getting picked by an Alabama cornerback with Nick Saban on the broadcast, which was, I mean, just the state of Alabama football.
I mean, that Manning cast lineup, by the way, LeBron James,
I know.
Nick Saban, that Matthew Stafford. I mean, that was an unreal, crew. I think Chris Long, to kind of finish, probably was the least notable of them all, but still, like, that was an unreal crew. And I think the Manning cast continues to get better every single week. I'm a big fan.
How are they pulling that many guests? Like,
I mean,
people
have to be shelling out cheddar.
I was gonna say, people have to be reaching out, saying like, I want to get on that, because I don't see why. Like, I think people would watch no matter who the guest lineup is, but I think there must be some interest from outside parties being like, let me get on that for the.
I will say this, and I think this is going to make people upset. The Manning cast is a fantastic broadcast for diehard football fans, people who don't need to be handheld by the commentators to watch the football game. Because if you don't know football that well, there's not play-by-play at all. There's no play-by-play, very little color on the actual plays being made, to where I still think that as much as everyone loves the Manning cast and everyone's throwing support at the Manning cast, I only think it's ever going to be like this kind of side piece until like there's actual play. I mean, the standard fan's not watching that. I mean, the average fan's not watching that. They don't really, they want, I think, in my opinion, to have actual analysis of the game, or at least like be made more aware of what's going on.
I guess if you don't know football at all,
which, I mean, even if you know it at an average level, I mean, that's a high percentage of football fans.
If you just know the rules, though, that has to be a superior broadcast, in my opinion, because it's not like you're getting much info from a normal broadcast anyways. They're literally just telling you, like, here's a penalty, here's a XYZ. Like, they're not actually explaining how those things work. And if they do, sometimes they get it fucking wrong,
Fair. I guess what you're missing maybe in the play-by-play is just the energy of the call. And if you're listening to that, the only person that matters is Gus Johnson. Yeah. Gus Johnson's the guy. Or I guess and Al Michaels. Sorry, Chris. Al Michaels too. Al Michaels, a legendary play-by-play commentator. All right, let's go ahead and get into this 2022 NFL draft board, a sensational piece here. I wanted to read off the top 10 players and kind of go over a handful of those names, maybe some of the surprises that have jumped inside the top 10 or even moved up inside the top 10. Still at number 1 overall is Kayvon Thibodeau, the Oregon edge defender, at number 2. No surprises there, by the way. He's also the number 1 picked player, number 1 overall in PFF's mock draft simulator. So far this year, mock draft simulator, Kayvon Thibodeau, the highest picked player at number 1 overall. Number 2, though, safety Kyle Hamilton, up to number 2. That's the highest ranked safety you've probably ever put, right? I mean, that's got to be the highest safety on any board so far.
I mean, we had Derwin James as a top 5 player. It was probably the last time we had a safety in the top 5 back in 2018. Yeah, 2018 sounds right. But since then, no, haven't had a safety in the top. Probably, maybe I don't think we've had one in the top 10. It's been some weak safety classes though as well. So, yeah, Kyle Hamilton, we've talked about him enough at this point, but that dude is a different animal at the safety position.
You're not saying Kyle Hamilton's better than Derwin James, are you?
No, it's just different classes begat different draft boards. Derwin was in class with, I think just behind Quentin Nelson, a couple quarterbacks back in 2018, Baker and Sam Darnold. So I think that's why he wasn't. It's just that if there were quarterbacks worthy of being the number 1 overall pick, I think that's the biggest thing here. We put him at number 1 overall. It's not that we're saying that, for when we have Baker Mayfield ahead of Derwin James, we're not saying that Baker Mayfield is better for his respective position than Derwin James. We're saying that if I need a quarterback, I'm fucking taking Baker Mayfield because that's going to impact my team way more than a guy like Derwin James.
Which I think that right there speaks to, I guess, how unnerving or unsettling this quarterback class is, because you have 7 non-quarterbacks ahead of the first quarterback on your big board right now, which I don't think we've ever had that many players ahead of the first quarterback in a long time, especially because PFF, I think more so than other media outlets and probably even teams, factors in positional value into their big board so much more than others do. Number 3, Derek Stingley Jr., cornerback at LSU. He's been a consensus top 5 player on everyone's draft board probably since his true freshman year. Ranked first in PFF coverage grade as a true freshman at LSU. One of the freakier athletes in all of college football. That's not going to change anytime soon. Talk about freaky athletes, though. Number 4, offensive tackle Evan Neal, Alabama. I remember when we were first talking about him, I think it was either preseason or right after week 1. I said, man, I don't know. This kid's looking like a top 5, top 10 lock. And you're like, we'll see. We've seen now. I think Evan Neal probably entering that top 5, top 10 lock situation.
Okay, top 10, I can give you.
Okay.
Top 5 is always just difficult to really say where needs are going to end
Especially with QBs, yeah.
But yeah. So
it's top 5 player, though. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Evan Neal's a monster. Evan Neal's an absolute monster. Number 5, he's also on this podcast, soon to be friend of the show once you listen to that interview. Edge defender Aidan Hutchinson, of Michigan. Now, the interview, I'm going to tease a little bit here. He got to Michigan as a true freshman at 17 years old at 260 pounds. And then worked up to 280 and played around 280 in his first, freshman and sophomore seasons. And then this past year, he's playing at a career low 260 right now. Feeling built, feeling fast. And if you turn on his tape, he's exploding off the ball better than I think you've seen in previous years. He's beating people on the backside of runs. And then you look at some of the Bruce Feldman's freaks list numbers, low 4.6 3-cone, 4.04 short shuttle, the 135-pound, the super lift or something he's got going on. He's got some crazy, crazy numbers. And this guy, as humble as ever, too. The interview was fantastic.
Yeah, and we talked about that a couple weeks ago, probably after the Washington game, about how now he's an edge guy. He used to be kind of inside, outside, versatile guy.
He had that extra weight.
No, yeah, but now that's when he was up at 280, 260. He has played almost exclusively on the edge this year and is at his best, looks at his best there while playing. He's been, snap for snap, the best defensive lineman in the country so far this season, with obviously Kayvon Thibodeau being hurt and the guy behind him on this list not quite just being as dominant, but pretty close in his own right.
After the recording, gave me a cheeky no comment when I brought up how well he looked against Jackson Kirkland and what went in that game. He's like, you know what? Good player, no comment. It was pretty incredible. He's a cool guy. All right, 6, DeMarvin Leal, the Texas A&M defensive lineman. I think of all these players so far, and I know we brought up Kayvon Hamilton, can I say Leal's the most #fun to watch? I do think his tape and what he does, as big as he is some of the most absurd shit I've ever seen. Yeah,
so Hutchinson's lost weight. Leal is still 290. Like, that guy is still a monster of a defensive end. It was still an impactful guy this past weekend against Arkansas. We'll actually get to that a little later. But, yeah, I think he's, like I said, he's not too far behind Aidan Hutchinson in just terms of down-to-down playmaking ability.
I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later. We're going to focus on the 2022 draft board for a while. But there's a lot of edge players inside your top 50. A very talented edge class coming out for a year where we had, Kwity Paye, Jalen Phillips, etc. DeMarvin Leal on Texas A&M's website listed at 6'4", 290, 83.9 pass rushing grade so far, 11 total pressures on the season for the big boy. Next here, number 7, Kaiir Elam, Florida cornerback. That if you look at any metric on PFF.com right now, which you can get if you subscribe to one of our college football subscriptions, Kaiir Elam is ranking towards the top in yards allowed per coverage snap, passer rating allowed, PFF coverage grade. He has been phenomenal for what is now a top 15 Florida team in college football?
Yeah, 54 yards all year. 10 targets, 54 yards, 4 catches. And honestly, he had a penalty and 2 pass breakups, had a penalty against Alabama. That was, in my opinion, a poor call. Should have been 3 pass breakups because that was a great play that he made in that game. Yeah, Elam's not, I don't think he's too far behind Derek Stingley as a prospect. Derek Stingley is obviously kind of in zone tier. You feel very good about him. But Elam, very much a top 10 sort of cornerback prospect, in my opinion.
We've talked a ton about this cornerback class. Another guy that's on a tear. He doesn't crack the top 10, but for Washington, Trent McDuffie. He has been phenomenal this season as well. I think he's a guy that a lot of people are going to like as a first-round type of prospect in 2022's draft. Finally, we get to the first quarterback on the board here, and it's not Spencer Rattler. It's not Sam Howell. It's Malik Willis. Liberty quarterback, one of the highest graded quarterbacks in the country this year, a guy that kind of built like a running back and plays like a running back in some ways, but you've seen some development from him as a passer this year, and you spoke to it a handful of episodes ago. If you're going to chase high ceiling or high potential or a guy that's going to give you the most in the NFL or could give you the most in the NFL, Malik Willis is your guy, and that's why he's your number 1 guy.
Yeah, I just don't love the quarterback class. Like, it's not... There's no guy that I really feel strongly about being worthy of that number 1 overall pick right now. That's why he obviously sits down there at 8th, because I said those 7 guys ahead of him I feel are very talented top 10 sort of prospects. I'm willing to pick all those guys inside of that. At this point, I'm not sure I think that's it. Like, we talk about that blue chip tier of players in this class. I think that's it for me. And so then at that point, Willis can sneak in at number 8, whatever. But I still think that's kind of low for a top quarterback for us in any given year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there is still opportunity for him to rise up. There's also opportunity for some of these other quarterbacks to go back and forth since it is such a close class. But I think this time last year we had Trevor Lawrence 1, Justin Fields 2, Zach Wilson top 10. Like, it was, comfortable. I mean, Mac Jones was still even a top 30, top 40 player on PFF's draft board. It was obvious that this quarterback class, or at least last year's, was very talented and highly regarded. This year, Malik Willis at number 8 overall. Number 9 here, Tyler Linderbaum, your guy. Big on Tyler Linderbaum, the center for Iowa, one of the highest graded interior offensive linemen in the country.
Yeah, so I guess he's a blue chip center, in my opinion, but that's center, interior offensive line, not a position you're just like, we are going to say, hey, draft that guy top 10. So that's why I said that earlier. But he's number 10, number 9 on our draft board because that's shit how good he is for his position. So, yeah, I think he's about as safe a center as we've seen PFF era.
Finally, at 10, quarterback Sam Howell, UNC. Off to a 2-2 start for UNC. But we said it going into this year, it's going to be so difficult for him to maintain high-end success, specifically from a numbers perspective or a Heisman perspective, with how much they lost offensively. De'Ami Brown, Daz Newsome, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, all not there for UNC this year, and they've suffered because of that. I mean, this offense, this supporting cast is objectively bad, and Sam Howell is struggling because of it.
I think that's, if you're drafting quarterback, I almost think that's good for his long-term development at the collegiate level, to not have as much talent around you, to not fall into that trap of it being, I don't want to say easy. Obviously, playing quarterback's never easy, but that trap of saying, you know, I only throw it when guys are open. Because a lot of schools, a lot of teams, when you are loaded with talent, you only can't throw it when guys, you can wait to see guys who are wide open to throw it. So I do think that him playing with a little lesser talent, the wide receiver position, numbers aren't going to look as good, obviously. But I think if you're talking about like guys helping him towards the draft, it's probably good for him.
Still has a cannon as well. I mean, he has easily the most impressive deep throw I've seen from any quarterback this season. We looked at that on the way back from, I don't remember what tailgate we were coming from. They're all starting to blur together. People in the office are like, hey, how is this? I was like, dude, honestly, I'm losing my mind here. There's a lot going on with these tailgates. South Bend should be awesome. And then after that, we start to hit the flights. We got Baton Rouge. We got Tuscaloosa, Knoxville. Going to be some wild times coming up here for PFF tailgate. Before we get to,
I don't want to do driving. Driving can be brutal, and that Sunday morning drive back can be.
Dude, the drive back you did from Penn State will go down in history as one of the most absurd things I've ever seen. Going right from 11 p.m., getting back to Cincinnati at 6 a.m.
I was starting to hallucinate by the end, I'll be honest. Dude, I was seeing things.
Dangerous game. That's a dangerous game. Before we get into the now that we talked quarterbacks, Malik Willis at number 8, Sam Howell at number 10. I wanted to focus a little bit more on the quarterback class as a whole. I know you said you don't like it, but outside of the top 10, Spencer Rattler now dropped down to 15 overall, the Oklahoma quarterback that's been a roller coaster by all senses of the word so far this season. And then sneaky here, Matt Corral, the leader in Heisman odds right now, according to DraftKings Sportsbook. He's the 27th overall player on PFF's draft board and has a legit opportunity to jump on a rocket in front of national opinion if he does go in to go beat Alabama. They're 14-point dogs this weekend against Alabama. He's the 27th ranked player. Then you have Tanner McKee, who is going to be on this podcast. He'll be on the Thursday episode. And Carson Strong, Nevada quarterback, at 46. Tanner McKee at 40. Start with Rattler. Is all hope lost for him being your number 1 quarterback, or is this still something, a situation that could fluctuate?
No, so I think that's the biggest thing here is we are still non-conference for the majority.
They're still evaluating.
So I mean, Malik Willis has played one of the tougher tests he'll face all year in Syracuse, which I thought he passed. I thought he looked good against them in that game. Carson Strong has kind of faced his toughest test. It was a little up and down. I didn't see quite the progression I would have hoped for. Still kind of a first read majority kind of guy. But you still have Malik Willis. You still have Mississippi on the schedule late in the season. And for Howell, Rattler, Corral, McKee, you basically still have your whole conference schedules, which is what you're going to the tape you're going to kind of go back to for the most part anyway. So I do think there is a lot of possibility to change up this order. It will be in flux for sure over the course of the season. But guys, they're going to have to step up, all these guys. Like as I just said, no one's really playing down in, down out, consistently excellent football. Matt Corral probably the closest to that at this point. But even then, I'm going to need to see it. He's going to have the whole SEC schedule basically to prove himself. So this is a influx, but not a great quarterback class at the moment, in my opinion.
Give the people more on Tanner McKee, the Stanford quarterback that wasn't even ranked in your top 100 before the season, but has really stood out for Stanford so far this year. Now the number 40 overall player, also a guy that's going to be on this show on Thursday.
So McKee, I'll just compare him to last year's Stanford quarterback, whose name is now
Davis Mills.
Davis Mills, the neck.
Davis the neck Mills.
In that They were both highly rated recruits. Both have good, not excellent sort of arm strength. I think McKee is probably a little bit stronger arm, and both will get categorized as probably not the most fleet of foot. Like, they're not playmakers. You're not gonna involve them in the running game. They are pocket passers. But given that, McKee is a much better athlete, in my opinion. Like, he is a much more coordinated. You see him with his feet, his ability to move in the pocket, his ability to throw when things aren't perfect around him, and his ability to throw on the move is much, much better than Davis Mills was, in my opinion. Now, obviously, that Stanford team is not great. They got kind of blown out week 1 by Kansas State. They lost this past week against, who'd they lose to this past week? Well, they lost this past week. But I thought even in that game, Tanner McKee looked good. You see a really live arm. You see really natural thrower of the football in terms of the arm angles he can throw from. And I think the biggest thing, and I was saying this to you this weekend, is you see it on whether it's RPOs, screens, just like the real easy layups. His ball placement on those is always pinpoint. There's no throwing it to the back shoulder on a wide bubble screen of a running back and making them kind of turn around for it. None of that. His ball placement underneath is pinpoint. And while he hasn't taken a ton of shots down the football field yet, he's 4 games into his career, I think that accuracy is going to continue to shine through as we see him throughout the season.
Last but not least on this quarterback crew here, the last one ranked inside your top 50, Carson Strong of Nevada. I think a lot of people were highlighting him as this Zach Wilson, Joe Burrow candidate who could come in, maybe wasn't the number 1 overall pick, but could ascend. Mm-hmm. Has not ascended up your draft board in that way. Why not?
Yeah, like I said, he's kind of been a guy who we questioned his pocket presence heading into the season. Could he operate from a less than stellar pocket, from a quote unquote NFL pocket? And could he go through progressions more in this Nevada offense that's, not a high level conceptually offense? And I think those two things he just has kind of struggled with. He has not shown the improvement I was hoping for. So he was a guy who was in the 40s on the list preseason, and he's kind of still the same guy. And again, some of that is you just don't get you're not going to have that sort of coaching at the college level. Like that, you're not going to be forced to do a lot of those things. And so you don't practice those and you don't do them as well. So I do think that there's still a ton of talent there. I love his arm talent. It has one of the most aesthetically pleasing releases in the country, has one of the strongest arms in the country, but it's just kind of a little something missing. He is just a project at this point.
I want to get to some high-level takeaways from this, kind of draft board process or this draft board update. But before we do so, got to let you guys know, week 3 of football may be in the books. So it's time to review the tape and get ready for week 4 with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off another action-packed week, DraftKings is giving new customers $150 instantly when they bet $1 on any football game. Listen up, because you don't want to miss this. Head to DraftKings Sportsbook app now and place a bet of $1 on any week 1 game to receive $150 in free bets instantly. If Sportsbook is not yet available in your state, DraftKings still has huge cash prizes up for grabs all season long with their daily fantasy contest. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code PFF to receive $150 in free bets when you place a $1 bet on any football game. That's promo code PFF. This week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 years or older in New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. 1 per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. High-level takeaways. You have here, quarterback class stinks. We've kind of already hit on that. But your number 2 takeaway, running back class, also not great.
Yeah. Not only is there not a guy who I think is going to even be in that first round sort of Najee Harris, Travis Etienne conversation that we saw. Obviously, we're not drafting even those guys in the first round, but there might be like a 1 second round. This might be one of those years where there's just not even a guy worth taking, 45 overall, 50 overall, where you often see a lot of running backs, sort of a run on running backs go, kind of like 2 years ago in the DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, all those guys going in that sort of area. I'm not sure there's one. Breece Hall is still the number 1 running back. He still breaks tackles at about as high level as anyone in the country. But I could see there being 1 through 2 rounds, 1 or 2 backs going in this draft, because guys like Isaiah Spiller have not looked nearly as good this year. And there really wasn't a lot going into this year. They're having a couple risers on the PFF draft board. Kenneth Walker from Michigan State cracks top 100. Zach Charbonnet from UCLA cracks top 100. But man, not a lot of guys who are kind of that total package bell cow sort of backs that you would love to, or like that NFL teams love drafting that highly.
I'll argue, I've said this, I think, on a handful of previous episodes, but the bell cow back, the 3-down back, are we even chasing that anymore? If you're a team, do you even want...
The NFL does. I mean, the NFL does.
I know, but would you, if you were running a team, chase even a 3-down back? I don't know if I want the Niners model. I want just speed, a rotation of talent. Obviously, they're battling injuries a bit. And
they drafted Trey Sermon, who's like that kind of mold.
True.
But yes, I do agree, though. You want that the the Najee Harris, the 4.65 running back is not in vogue anymore. Like, I wouldn't want that in my offense whatsoever because there's just less you can do with them. Mm-hmm. I don't want that at any position. Like, I don't want a tight end that runs a 4.8. You want guys that at any given moment can immediately stretch the field because that just puts so much stress on defenses. And then we keep harping, big plays, explosiveness. That's what's winning in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, the 4.5, 4.55 plus running back, even if he's a 3-down, 6'1", 230. I mean, I just don't know if I want that. One, if you're looking at how, the NFL is currently drafting those players, they go too high. And two, too high in terms of the draft. And two, I'd rather honestly chase speed and chase a variety of skill sets as you've seen other backfields be built that way. On to the next takeaway you have here. And I think I kind of hinted at it, but this edge class is fucking phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we got 3 of the top 6, if you call DeMarvin Leal an edge, which, I mean, shit, that's where he plays. 290 pounds. Obviously could play inside in the NFL, but I think that's teams are obviously going to evaluate him first as an edge because that's the easiest projection, and then you have 2 more in the top 15 in Kingsley Enagbare of South Carolina, George Karlaftis of Purdue. And then you have 4 more in the top 30 in Drake Jackson, in Adam Anderson, of Georgia, Drake Jackson of USC, Nick Benito of Oklahoma, and Majay Sanders of Cincinnati. I don't know what that is. Add all those up. That's how many are in the top 30. It is a loaded class. I think I put 6 in the last mock draft I did, and that could even be low for this edge defender class because, again, everyone wants those guys. That's the premium position. They go highly, and this one has a lot of them and a few more guys who are producing and looking good on college football field than we saw last year.
I'm excited to get to our college football week 4 takeaways because a handful of the players that you mentioned already kind of popped off. We have some kind of significant risers here. I had in mind some highlights. I mean, 3 receivers all played really well this past week. Treylon Burks continues to look really impressive. The Arkansas wide receiver, also a friend of the show. Jahan Dotson's one of the highest graded receivers in the Power 5, the Penn State wideout. And also Garrett Wilson turned in another stellar performance for Ohio State. But let's start with a non-receiver. Utah linebacker. You highlighted this guy preseason.
Yeah.
You just, Devin Lloyd, the Utah linebacker, as the best linebacker in the country, maybe the favorite to win the Butkus Award this past week. 7 pressures on 18 pass rushing snaps. A stellar week for Lloyd for the Utes.
Yeah, he's a very, very productive football player and sort of a unique skill set in that he's not going to run a 4.5. Like, he's probably going to run like a 4.65, but he takes on blocks so well. He's long at 6'3", 235. And in this game, 7 pressures against Washington State on 18 pass rushing snaps. And those were not, unblocked coming around on a stunt. I think he beat the center one-on-one about 3 times as a blitzer. And that's a skill set every team in the NFL is looking for. It is not only, there's 2 very distinct aspects. You can get away by not being a great coverage, sort of linebacker in the NFL if you are a high-level blitzer. Is what we kind of kept saying about Micah Parsons. It's like, if you draft Micah Parsons and don't use him as a blitzer, you're just doing it wrong. If you're dropping him in coverage and expecting him to be Luke Kuechly, you're doing it wrong because what that can do in a blitz-heavy scheme is so dangerous because blitzes just get home so much quicker or have the potential to get home so much quicker than just, an obvious 4-man rush, even if you are winning. So I think Devin Lloyd now, again, doesn't have the tools necessarily to be a round 1 guy, but I think he's going to be a round 2 sort of linebacker where you're like, how was he so productive in the NFL? That's just because he didn't have necessarily the high-end tools, but that guy can play.
6'3", 235, coming off a 92.3 PFF grade against Washington State, a 79.8 grade against San Diego State, and a loss, by the way, Mike. San Diego State can't lose this season. They're not going to lose this season.
Notre Dame can't either.
Yeah.
It's the undefeated pod right here.
That's true. It's an undefeated pod. It is an undefeated pod. On to Brian Asamoah.
Yeah.
talk about a riser. This guy coming off a really big week.
So Oklahoma linebacker, he's 6'1", 230, and he's in the mix for the most athletic linebacker in the country. This guy flies left and right on the football field. Now, has never necessarily, he's kind of in that Darren Lee-esque category of such a high-end athlete. But man, his balance at times is an issue, has had tackling problems in the past. Week 1 against Tulane, he missed 3 tackles on 4 attempts. So this guy, oftentimes out of control, but in this game, not a single missed tackle against West Virginia. 7 stops between the run game and the pass game. He was wrapping up in space consistently. Now he's kind of going to be that tweener. He's honestly more profiles better to safety, in my opinion, than actual linebacker right now. Sort of Jeremy Chin-esque in that regard at his size at 6'1", 228. But the NFL will be looking long and hard at this guy with how just twitched up he is at the linebacker position.
Oklahoma, reason to watch defense, which you kind of love to see. Treylon Burks, I mentioned him a little bit. He had 5 catches for 163 and a touchdown in this one. What I think has been super impressive for him, and I remember getting flamed on Twitter for saying he's down 5 pounds and feeling a little bit more spry, but he does look faster this season. And when you can do that at the size he is, 6'3", 220, that is super impressive because you always talk about, I want separators. These big contested catch guys, great for college, not for the NFL. I think Burks is developing into more than just a big contested catch type for Arkansas and actually a guy that can separate and win after the catch. Yeah.
So in this game, I mean, the 85-yard touchdown he had is just a go ball. And he's 4 yards separation on just a go ball where it's just because he was faster. And when you have that level of speed, it's kind of like the DK Metcalf thing. When you're that fast, when you're moving 225 pounds in I'd put Burks probably in the low 4.4 kind of guy. It's just guys bounce off you. You have a lot of momentum behind you, and cornerbacks that are, 20 pounds lighter than him are going to not slow him down. So I think you see that with Burks, and he's winning more this year. The biggest thing with him, why he's on this riser list, a little more from the outside. That was a one-on-one route from the outside when he's almost been primarily a slot guy, and most of his production has been from the slot in his career.
Have a couple more risers to highlight before we get to the followers list here, but I have to break the segment here.
No. What
is
happened?
this? Am I crazy? I don't think I've ever seen this before. The University of Arizona football team has tweeted out a graphic calling for walk-on tryouts.
Oh, nice.
That, I don't know if I've seen that. Have you seen that before from Power 5 program?
That's tough, dude.
That's tough. October 12th, if you are in or near the Arizona Stadium, 6 o'clock, walk-on tryouts. That is a rough situation for the University of Arizona football. Desperate for talent.
That reminds me of a story. I was at Notre Dame. They were a very good women's basketball program. Obviously, they went to the finals twice, I think, when I was there. And then this was my senior year, I want to say, when they lost to Brittany Griner. Maybe been junior. They lost to Brittany Griner out, if you remember Brittany Griner, the 6'7" Baylor.
Yeah. She's in
center.
the WNBA now, dominating.
Now in the WNBA. But, I mean, she just owned them in that game, in the finals. They had no answer. Literally 2 days later, I'm at the rec center, and there is a official Notre Dame thing on the pamphlet board where of all the advertisements saying, any girls 6 foot and over, please try out for the Notre Dame women's basketball.
Wow, and they were good.
Yeah, and
they were just looking for big.
They just needed someone to replicate a 6'7". I don't think they found one, but I can see why. It shits that when you, especially when it's like an outlier like that, if you have one. But I just always thought that was hilarious. I'm like, damn. That's when you know it's down bad, when you just don't have the size to match up with the Brittany Griner.
I don't know if it's a size issue for Arizona, talent issue, but I might have to click into this tryout packet, maybe make a flight out because I'm coming. Bear down. All right, a couple more risers here. Zachary Carter, edge defender for the Florida Gators, an 86.4 pass rushing grade on the season. He has 2 pressures in all but 1 game so far this year, 3 pressures against Tennessee in week 4.
Yeah, so he's similar body type wise to DeMarvin Leal. And he's an edge defender, but he's 285 pounds and 6'4". And so they'll even kick him inside a 3-tech a little bit more than Leal, actually. But every single game has been an above average grade so far this season. He's played, Alabama offensive line. He's played Tennessee offensive line this past week. 89.6 overall in the season, 13 pressures. He just looks far more physical at the point of attack than he did last season. And he's a senior. You'll see this guy at either the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl They're going to be duking it out for this guy because he has really stepped his game up in a big way. Goes from 65.1 overall grade last year to now 89.6. Different player altogether.
Charles Cross also playing well, improved significantly from last year, played over 700 snaps at left tackle for Mississippi State in 2020, just a 64.4 grade then. So far this year, 300 plus snaps played at left tackle and 81.0 overall grade for Charles Cross, 6'5", 310. Also has an 82.7 run blocking grade, only 2 penalties on the year. Cross, another riser on the draft board.
Yeah, there were a number of guys heading into this season at the tackle position that I would qualify as athletic projects. So Cross obviously being one of them. I would throw Rasheed Walker from Penn State into that mix, Zion Nelson from Miami, maybe even Daniel Falale from Minnesota, like guys who you really hadn't seen it yet at a high level, but it's all there to do it at the NFL.
For Falale, it's all there. There's a lot there.
Yeah, there's more than all. It's like all times 1.2.
All there. Yeah, no, that was terrible. I'm gonna
take that back.
I'm going to leave.
Go ahead and delete that. And then Cross, of all those guys, has taken it to another level. Like he has actually shown improvement as a pass protector. 44 pressures allowed last season. Obviously, that's Mike Leach's offense. 44 pressures, but he's 574 pass blocking snaps. That's like more than a full season most tackles get in the NFL. This year, only 7 pressures through 4 games. And against LSU this past week, 71 pass blocking snaps, only 2 pressures allowed on an island for a lot of those. And sometimes you see a lot of 3-man rushes with Mike Leach's offense. That's kind of the MO for beating him. But he's still going one-on-one on the outside when that is the case. And I thought he held up really well, had some lock down some spin moves that are always, I love seeing offensive tackles go up against spin moves because it forced them to make adjustments on the fly, see what their balance looks like. And I thought he did really well. So Cross has shot up into a top 40 player now on the PFF.
I mean, and he hasn't even got into some of the better competition he'll face, for Mississippi State. I think he has a lot of opportunity in the future schedule here to put on some good tape. I mean, you start to dominate. His highest run blocking grade so far this year came against Memphis. Let's see him put it on against some of the SEC competition. I think that's an important note. I think you kind of mentioned it earlier, but a lot of these prospects, we talk about risers and followers and early draft board, we've barely scratched the surface on in-conference play. This is where, boys become men and these late draft eligible players actually turn into top 100, top 50 draft prospects. It'll be interesting to see how Charles Cross develops over the course of the rest of this season. Followers here, your guy, Kyren Williams, running back Notre Dame, 5'9", 200, had a solid year last year. I think he cracked the top 100 for PFF's draft board preseason. Now just a 68.8 grade on the year for Notre Dame, a faller on your draft board.
Yeah. Now, the situation hasn't been great, obviously.
The offensive line has been horrendous.
Yeah, we've talked about how bad Notre Dame's offensive line is, but you still got to overcome it to some meaningful degree. And the worry with Kyren is he is so slightly built, or like he's 5'9", 199, like he just doesn't have the mass to him to really take on a linebacker and fall forward. He's only averaging 1.4 yards after contact per attempt. Like, yeah, it's bad. Or excuse me, that was in this past game against Wisconsin. Yeah, it's bad, but he's still not making more than what's there. And that's the worry with me. 3.7 yards per attempt so far this season. That is pretty disastrous for a college running back. There's some things to like about him, but I think he's kind of just like, we're talking about running backs, we kept talking about, like, you have to have an explosive element to you. You have to have something to hang your hat on. I think Kylan's just kind of a guy in a number of ways.
I mean, only averaging 2.77 yards after contact per attempt too. That's where, I remember Cam Akers for Florida State had one of the worst offensive lines when he played there, but his yards after contact figures were absurd. I think he gained more than 80% of his yards after contact. He's still struggling behind that offensive line. Hasn't averaged more than 3 yards per carry, or 4 yards per carry in any but 2 games. Toledo and Purdue. Need him to show up in a big way if he's going to get back on the risers list here. Next faller, Andrew Booth.
Yeah,
didn't have a good game this past week for Clemson, the cornerback, but I still feel that I'm kind of in love with the way he plays the cornerback position. He's a super physical player. When he's attacking downhill, he attacks with vengeance. I thought he looked really good in run defense and also on a handful of swing passes, but still got beat up a little bit. One of the lowest graded games of his, honestly, collegiate career.
Yeah, so it's more about expectations. This Andrew Booth, you're expecting him to be a top 10, a possible top 10 sort of pick kind of guy with what his physical tools are. And in this one against NC State, gives up all 5 targets for 82 yards. Or excuse me, 9 of 12 targets for 82 yards. It was all 5 targets the week before that. And it's just, he is a guy who we talked about preseason hadn't been tested. And you really don't know how a guy plays catch point, how he is consistently his ability to break up passes until he really does get tested, because he had 220 coverage snaps in his career going into this year. And so I think we've seen that he's not quite at the level, in my opinion, of a Derek Stingley, of a Kyer Elam. Still a very, very good cornerback, but giving up, like I said, 82 yards and 2 scores to NC State, a little worrisome tape.
Saw a little bit of a monster in Emeka Mezi, the North Carolina State wide receiver. He's 6'3", 212, 15 targets, 14 receptions, 116 yards, and a touchdown in this game. A handful of those coming against Booth. We haven't talked about him a lot on this show, but he has graded well so far this season, has looked pretty good in a handful of games, only 2 drops on the year as well. Have you watched a lot of Emezi, or is he even on your radar?
I have not watched.
All right. Well, we're going to have to get to some Emezi tape later then. I think we're going to have to, because he's grading well, Mike. He's grading well, and he's 6'3", 212, and he plays for NC State. We're going to find him. NC State just upset Clemson, okay?
Yeah.
Going to have to add him to the list. All right. Keaton Slovis, the last one here on the fallers list. He's fallen from grace. Anthony Tresh on this show was picking Slovis to be the number 1 overall selection. He is falling from grace, which you hate to see. I think a lot of USC is falling from grace, if we're being honest. Maybe outside of Drake London, who currently leads the Power 5 in receiving yards. I think he ranks 2nd in forced missed tackles, but Slovis not having the same level of success.
Yeah, it's gone south. You expected career progression. It's what you hope to see. Get better every single year. Eliminate the throws where you just throw a dead center into a linebacker's chest. Well, that hasn't been the case, and they've honestly gotten worse. And now he's honestly in risk of losing his job. Not even just not being the number 1 overall pick, which I think the writing is on the wall for that. It's, does Jackson Dart replace him here by season's end with the way things are going against USC when you're losing to teams like Oregon State? And now I get that.
You're going to say teams like Oregon State. Oregon State's solid this year. They look good.
Do you think, as a USC fan, I can guarantee you
you don't go ask cast them away like some group of 5 team.
I'm going to say, you go ask Reggie Bush, you go ask Matt Liner, you go ask USC alums from the past. You think they're happy with losing to Oregon State?
They're not happy with losing to Stanford. Okay.
I mean, like, you can accept losing to Stanford, you can accept losing to, but you call for heads when you lose to Oregon State. I'm just saying that. That's a fucking fact of life. So
well, heads have been called already at USC.
So, but 4 turnover-worthy plays in this one. Numerous in ugly fashion. 3 picks. It was just, he's just not. Yes, he's accurate. Yes, he does some nice things, but he has a very weak arm and continues to make ugly decisions with footballs.
I think it's a good opportunity to talk about, the weak arm discussion. I mean, we brought it up. Who was it? I think Jordan Palmer, who we talked about, Joe Burrow a lot. And if you don't have, DJ Uiagalelei arm talent, you can still have success in the league if you make up for it in other places. Slovis isn't doing that. Slovis is making these bonehead decisions. You're not seeing what you like. You're not seeing like what you want from Slovis, even with that weak arm. So making it up in other places, he is not. It's not a death knell if you have a baby arm. See Joe Burrow, see some other quarterbacks in the NFL, but it does significantly hinder you, same as like size, all these different things. And if you're not like making it up objectively in other areas, it's going to be very difficult to overcome what is obviously a hinderment there. Hinderment, I don't think is a word. Hindrance. All right, bus watch.
Hinderment sounds like a gum that would be.
It's solid.
Good.
I've had it. Bus watch. CJ Henderson. We talked about it on the Monday episode, but my goodness. Traded for Dan Arnold in a 3rd rounder. If that's not a bust for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I don't know what is.
Yeah, at least you got something for him. A lot of times guys will ride out bad picks. John Ross, obviously, most notably here in town, 9th overall pick, and they tried to ride it out. And when it was quite obviously not going well in Cincinnati, I think there is something admirable, maybe not the right word, but there is something to realizing when it's not going to go well, realizing that when you need to cut your losses, realizing that guy's not going to have success here, whether it's you, him, whatever, and getting whatever you can in return. Like a 3rd rounder is still could be a very valuable pick in return for them. It could be going to be a top 100 pick for them. So that's still a guy that can add to your football team. But man, to turn a 9th overall pick, which in that draft was not like it's not the 2013 draft. This isn't a draft that was bereft of talent. There are guys that are impact players from that class. To turn that into just a third rounder at this point? Like if you just
not
drafted...
just a third rounder. Don't disrespect Dan Arnold.
Okay, Dan Arnold too. But it's just, and you had to give up a fifth back in return. Pretty rough. That's just rough.
I mean, it's definitely rough. I think rough would be an understatement. It's a must watch for sure.
I will say just the guys all drafted behind him here. So CJ Henderson goes 9. Jedrick Wills 10. Sure. We would love Jedrick Wills and Jaguars. Mekhi Becton 11. Henry Ruggs 12. Tristan Wirfs 13. Javon Kinlaw 14. Javon Kinlaw probably the first guy you get to that's like not making more of an impact than CJ Henderson was.
Yeah, so. Even Henry Ruggs surpassing CJ Henderson after what was a rough rookie season for the former Alabama wideout. He's also, we haven't talked a lot about Ruggs. Ruggs is making some, in addition to getting separation down the field, I think he's made a handful of really impressive catches too. Had that one contested snag against Xavier Howard, a toe drag swag on the sideline in that game as well. I think there's been
his ball skills were great at Alabama. The contorting his body to catch that, like that wasn't a surprise for me. If you watch his tape at Alabama, I think he only had like a few drops in his entire college career. So that was never the case. So it was more just consistent route running.
I think what's been evident for me watching Henry Ruggs tape back, John Gruden is doing a fantastic job of motioning him pre-snap and avoiding press. Right now, of all receivers with at least 60 routes against press, he has the lowest yards per route run. He is not, and I don't think it's a death knell when he gets pressed, but he is something he struggled with. He struggled with physicality last year. I think a handful of analysts mentioned that. Motioning him pre-snap, getting him these free releases is super important for him to get open, and now it's working.
Yeah, Gruden has doubled his usage of pre-snap motion since he got into the NFL. And
got into the NFL. Oh, saying from when he started. Yeah, okay.
So 2018, his first year, to now, it's doubled. And that is a way to get a guy a free release. If a guy's motioning across the formation at the snap, you're not going to press him. Like, it's just it's going to be fucking impossible when a guy runs 4.29 to try to get your hands on him. It's what the Chiefs do with Tyreek Hill, and even it's a good way to keep defenses accountable for that speed, or have to account for that speed, because it can get you a favorable matchup. Like I said, if a guy runs a 4.29 and is guarded by a corner that runs a 4.6, that's a favorable matchup. You can't necessarily just go ahead and play man coverage and expect that to work out. So
I mean, the analytics have been done. The research has been done on how much pre-snap motion can help offenses. I think you even saw.
We're not breaking new ground here.
Yeah, you're not breaking new ground. I think it was even mentioned with the Packers-Niners game on the broadcast about how much why Shanahan leverages it, because he knows how much of an advantage it gives him. Yeah. The other thing I found interesting, and this is kind of a side comment, but talking about kind of cheat codes, but Nick Saban mentioning, I don't know why any offense in college or the NFL doesn't run every play out of no huddle. Why don't they do it? It's absurd, because it just doesn't give defenses an opportunity to adjust and actually plan for things. I thought that was pretty interesting to hear from Saban, that how hard it is for defenses to adjust in the huddle. And when you look at some of the success that Jalen Hurts had in the Monday night game, and you even saw that with some of the rookie quarterbacks, when you start to get into the no huddle, I mean, success that Jalen Hurts had, it was definitely in that second half he put together one of the better drives of this game.
My face was just not about it there, but continue.
I'm saying I thought that was interesting that Saban called out no huddle and how hard it is for defenses. I heard multiple broadcasters call that out.
Yeah, I think it's also quarterbacks find it difficult too. Like the sort of mental break. It's kind of like a pitcher being asked to throw a pitch, get the ball back, throw a pitch again. You like the reset mentally to then process what's going on with the defense, as opposed to if it speeds up your process too as a quarterback. That I think is a big thing that goes into it, why they maybe some of them don't like it.
But Manning, one of the Mannings, brought up too that it gives Nick Sirianni more time to talk to Jalen Hurts and look at the fucking defense. Hey, this is what they're running. You got to move this and this. And I think that honestly, with quarterbacks that are struggling with that part of it, could be kind of helpful. Bust watch, the other bust, the Hall of Fame bust. This one's obvious. Go ahead and kick it off.
We didn't. So we did the whole episode about guys on each team that are going to be in the Hall of Fame, and we didn't bring this guy up, even though he is a goddamn Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Lock. And that is on us. And it's Justin Tucker. Absolute bust watch. That ball is probably in the Hall of Fame as we speak.
Has to be
6-yarder, because that was insane. But man, just all the data and all the sort of charts we do about kickers, all the research we've done says that this guy is far and away the best in NFL history, and it's not even close. A lot of kickers, the sort of year-on-year consistency and the sample size you need to say are they really good or not is a lot more massive than one season. And Tucker is just all the way out on his own in terms of how much better he is than an average kicker. And gosh, 6-yarder, you don't win that game unless you have Justin Tucker. So,
whiff watch This is where we highlight a player that was high on our draft board in previous years that has not led or lived up to those expectations. It's journeyman cornerback DeAndre Baker.
Journeyman.
Now journeyman.
He's been in the league 3 years. And he's journeyman because he had got arrested for pulling a gun at a party, which classic. And then classic prank. No, and then obviously bounces around, goes to Kansas City, and now is actually playing again. Kind of speaks to how dire Kansas City's cornerback situation is, but not playing well. He was 16th on the PFF draft board that year, 31st overall or 32nd overall to the Giants that year. I can't exactly remember. But man, a big whiff. Some of those things are, again,
off-field.
If you're pulling a gun at a party, you're probably not making the best decisions in your day-to-day life to be the guy. Like that just comes back to your pre-draft homework that you got to do on a guy. That we obviously don't have access to here at PFF.
I mean, I think the other part of the learning process for that one is just how physical he was at Georgia and how much he relied on, making contact both at the line of scrimmage and late in the route, getting away with a lot of late contact at Georgia. I think a lot of that, maybe we underrated, how much he leaned on that when he got, translated. Obviously, some of it was obviously off field as well.
Well, and also, when you're a physical cornerback and that's your play style, you better be 6'1", 210. He was 5'11", 190. You better, if you are the guy who is trying to beat up cornerbacks at the college level, you better have the sort of size and physical ability to continue to do so at the NFL. But when that's your game, but you are, again, like I said, 190 pounds, like DeAndre Baker was coming out, that's not going to be your game against DK Metcalf. That's not going to be your game against Michael Thomas, guys who got 20 pounds on you. 30 pounds in Metcalf's case. That's just not going to fly. You're not going to be able to play that way. And now it's nice to have that. But when you're 190 pounds, you better be running a 4.4, and you better be winning off athleticism first. So, whiff.
DeAndre Baker whiff. Breakout watch. Trayvon Diggs.
Bang.
Big pick six in this one. Read that speed out pretty nicely. He has an interception in all 3 games so far this season. Playing a lot better than last year. Breaking out, so to speak.
Yeah, they got a couple nice second-year corners. He was... Trayvon Diggs, obviously we mentioned Jalen Johnson last week. Those guys were 24th, Jalen Johnson, and 31st on the PFF draft board, respectively. So, dubs, if we want to chalk up. We want to go whiff watch.
Way too early to chalk up a dub.
Especially way too early for that. But I will say, 3 picks in 3 straight weeks. And this wasn't like, what was the game last year where he had 2 picks and there were some gimme picks. One was like him getting toasted. It might have been the Eagles game actually last year. One was him getting toasted and then he gets back in on it because of a terrible throw.
He also had that highly graded play where DK Metcalf caught that ball over him and then he popped it out on the 1 yard line.
Which is still a nice play.
Of course, it's a highly
graded
play.
Speaks to his playmaking ability that he has, shown all the way back to Alabama. But I think this year, those are real, this was a real pick. That pick 6 was him, key and 3-step, breaking on it before the ball. He broke on it before Devontae Smith even broke off his route. That is what you want from a cornerback at that position. And then obviously has the length, the ball skills, hauled it and pick it for 6. So yeah, I do think that he's taking a meaningful next step in his career.
Last segment of the Wednesday sode here before we get to the Aidan Hutchinson interview. First round lock. This one's a crazy one because you're naming a first round lock every week until the end of the season. Yeah. Who are the locks you've already named and who is our next lock here?
Locks already named. We had Kayvon Thibodeau start the year. We went to Derek Stingley, Evan Neal, Aidan Hutchinson, Kyle Hamilton last week. Got 5. And this one, we're starting to get hairy. I debated a few guys. I debated Garrett Wilson because I do think, after a monster game this year with his athleticism, but the wide receiver position, I think teams have sort of cooled on first round. Or at least teams still worry about going first round. So I'm not willing to necessarily say lock just yet. I'll go to the edge position where it's easy to tell the guys who are those high-end athletes. That's why I went Aidan Hutchinson a couple weeks ago. I'm going to DeMarvin Leal this week, the Texas A&M guy that we've talked about a lot in this show, because every game he's shown up, no real duds in there. Obviously, at his size, moves differently than your run-of-the-mill 290-pounder. That's why he can even play out on the edge. I just think when you're that physically gifted and you're that productive, that's a good combination to go in the first round.
I'm all in. I like it.
So I think we got 6 now. DeMarvin Leal, your 6th first round lock.
It's almost too freakishly, the size athleticism ratio, I think, was going to drive him. If you let that guy fall to the second round, I mean, he's just too rare. Yeah. Too rare of a human being. Way too rare of a human being. All right, let's go ahead and jump now to the interview with Michigan Edge, top 5 player on PFF's draft board, Aidan Hutchinson. Now joining the Tailgate podcast is current Michigan edge defender Aidan Hutchinson, a top 5 edge or top 5 player overall in the 2022 NFL draft. We really appreciate you coming on the show, Aidan. This is fantastic.
Thanks for having me, Austin. I'm glad to be on here.
Before we get into the dominance you've showed this season, I want to turn back the clocks a little bit and talk about your high school stardom, then going on as a 4-star recruit to commit to Michigan. What positions did you play in high school? Did you play on both sides of the ball? I know you're a 4-star recruit coming out, but what positions did you play?
So when I was a little bit younger in high school, I was really playing offensive line, defensive line, the standard thing. And then when I got a little older, I played tight end and defensive line when I finally kind of grew into my body a little bit, became less gangly. And, it was so much fun playing tight end. It's if I wasn't playing defensive end, I think that would be it'd be my secondary position is tight end. I love catching. I love blocking. Blocking's all right when you pancake them. But, it was high school was a really good time. And, got lucky enough to get offered by Michigan, and now 4 years into my career here.
And I know has Michigan ever thought about maybe getting you involved on the offense side of the ball? I mean, they got to get you some packages here if you played tight end in high school.
I know. I keep telling them every week I go up to Coach Gaddis. I say, Coach, come on, put me on the goal line. Like, get me a touchdown, something like that, or I'll just throw a block, whatever you want me to do. But I'm really trying to get on that side of the ball, whether that be smacking someone, catching a tud, whatever that may be.
And so I know you committed to Michigan. You had offers from other places, so LSU, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh. Was it ever a doubt that you were going to commit to Michigan? I know your dad, Chris, was a huge Michigan player. Were you just locked into Michigan from the start?
Yeah, I visited a couple other colleges, but I mean, mainly it was Michigan. It was Michigan from the start. I mean, my whole family went here. My sister just graduated from here. I mean, it's like my parents met here. So really, the stars were aligned. And if I didn't go to Michigan, I'd be a disappointment to my father and my mom probably.
I can't imagine if you committed to like Wisconsin. I know Michigan State offered you as well. That would have been rough. I'm sure Chris would not have been a huge fan of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about a former teammate of yours, a guy who's now currently playing for the Indianapolis Colts, first-round pick, Kwity Paye. Had him on this show. Such a humble dude, a guy that went to high school, played at running back in Rhode Island, got recruited to Michigan, and then developed felt like every week at Michigan into the star he is now. What kind of impact did Kwity have on you in the time that you spent with him?
Yeah, me and Kwity really came up together, it felt like, because when I came in, I was a freshman, and we were both behind Chase and Rashawn. So we were kind of the twos behind Chase Winovich and Rashawn Gary. And, ever since my freshman year, kind of all the way up until my junior year, we were playing together side by side, and we really grew a bond together. And I really had so much fun playing with him, and just being able to play on the opposite side of the ball of someone who is so dominant. It just makes your job so much easier. And if the offense isn't chipping both the ends, then someone's bound to get home. So it was really so cool, being able to play with him and really kind of growing up with him in my Michigan career.
Talk about another guy who could probably play both sides of the ball. I wish Michigan put him on offense, man. That guy would have had some success. Looking at some of your, Kwity Paye, ton of, really athletic, had that's absurd, like 6'3" 3-cone. You also put up some really impressive numbers this offseason, according to Bruce Feldman of The Athletic, 6'5" 3-cone, 4.64 40, 4.07 shuttle. How much do you feel your athleticism has improved over the course of your career at Michigan, or is this just God-given talent? Because some of these numbers are just absurd.
Yeah, I think I came in when I was 17 years old, so I was super young. Mm-hmm. My body was a little bit underdeveloped. And I think just being here, training here, I've gotten so much faster and stronger and so much more agile, laterally too. So, that's a props to our strength coaches. And then I think that's really just my body just developing. I mean, I just turned 21, so I'm getting to be at that peak performance age. Yeah, it was. I really worked hard to develop myself.
That peak performance age is showing up this season. I'll say that. So when you got to Michigan at 17, I know you're currently listed at 6'6", 265. What was your height and weight when you first got to Michigan?
Yeah, I was about 260 coming into Michigan, but
Oh,
with
wow.
the defense, yeah, with the defense we were running back in the day, they wanted me to be heavier, so I was probably about 275, 280 ish, for my freshman year, my sophomore year, and man, that carrying the extra weight is not too fun. And then kind of my junior year and my senior year, I cut a little weight, so I've been playing at about 260, 265 ish, these past couple of years, and it's been amazing.
I think where that shows up, man, and what I've seen on your tape is the backside of runs. You have had so many plays on the backside of runs this year, just exploding off the backside and making tackles either behind the line of scrimmage or near it. It has been absolutely fun to watch. Are there any players, NFL players, maybe outside of Kwity Paye, that you turn the tape on and try and take some from their game? I know there's obvious ones like Mac and Myles Garrett, but are there any players specifically that you turn on and try and take some of their game for you?
Yeah, I watch a ton of NFL players. It's probably my favorite film to watch right now, just because I just like seeing what they do, and it gives me some extra ideas in my head. And kind of guys like Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, the Bosa brothers. Trying to think who else. I really just look at the the top guys who are elite, and it's really fun to watch them. And it's I really use that and try to take little nuggets and implement it into my game.
Max Crosby has been especially fantastic this season. I think he leads the
Oh
NFL
yeah,
in
it's
total
been crazy.
pressures. It's just absurd. Another guy that just really added to his frame when he got to Las Vegas, and he has a ton of speed, a ton of length. That's shown up big time in the NFL. Blake Corum and Cade McNamara have been so massively successful to start this season. What's it been like going against those two in practice, and how impressed, I guess, have you been with their development over the kind of this short start of this season?
Yeah, for sure. First, I'll start with Blake. The kid came in like absolutely developed. Just big ass biceps, big legs, fast as hell. He came in like just a freak, and he really worked to develop himself more this offseason. And it's really, I think all his hard work is really paying off this season. He's having a hell of a year. And then Cade, yeah, Cade's super just annoying to go against in practice, because I think he's just a very smart and intuitive player, and he uses those tools to his advantage. And I think at quarterback, that's the most important thing. You can have the athletic quarterbacks, the big ones, whatever that may be, but if you don't have that, kind of that Tom Brady intuition, or kind of the smarts with the game, it's going to be hard to succeed now, and especially at that next level.
No, I would agree with you 100%. I think the smarts are probably the biggest thing. The instincts, the play recognition,
Right.
all that stuff is what shows up for McNamara so far this year. I wanted to focus in a little bit on a specific matchup you've had this year. It was one of the bigger ones. Jackson Kirkland, Washington left tackle you went up against, and had a really successful game against him in addition to all the other games you've had. Going into that game, talk me through kind of the preparation. And I'm sure maybe it didn't differ from what you do with other offensive tackles, but what did you see on tape from him specifically going into that game? And I guess how did that help you when it all said and done?
Yeah, I really watched a lot of tape on him. Kind of formulated my rush plan previously, and I know my ability, and I know how good I am, and I'm just super confident against anyone in the country. It doesn't matter who they are. So I'm really just going against nameless faces. That's all it is, because I'm super confident in my ability and kind of what I bring to the table. I think I have just a great combination of both speed and power on the edge. It's something that it's hard to find, and I really just I go against nameless faces every week. So.
If I could pry a little bit there, talk to me a little bit more about your pass rush plan and how you set that up. What what pieces do you pull from the film and put together in your plan? Are you taking notes? Are you putting these things into an Excel? I've heard it all. What exactly are you doing?
Yeah, I just watch a ton of film on my iPad. I got this little journal, and really I'm just consistently writing it, visualizing what I'm doing what I'm gonna do against these guys, And really that's the biggest piece of it for me, is just sitting there closing my eyes, and if I can see it in here, I'm going to be able to do it out there.
So far, I'm going to bring it out a little bit. This Michigan defense, top 10 defense and scoring drive percentage allowed so far this year, have been fantastic in the Power Five. What do you feel are some of the biggest contributing factors to the success on the defensive side of the ball for Michigan, maybe outside of yourself dominating already on the edge?
Yeah, Coach McDonald came in here and, gave us a great scheme, great plays, but, no plays really matter unless, guys are invested in it or invested in the culture you got going on. So I think, that's a tribute to, the hard work that we were putting in this offseason, just guys investing in what we're doing. And, I think, it's paying off. Right now we're 4-0. I think we're really good in the red zone right now. I mean, our defense bends a little bit, but we never break. And, it's really fun to turn on that tape and watch us fly around. That's what you want as a fast defense. I think we're getting there. We're really improving so much every single week. And, I think, by week 10, 11, 12, I mean, we should be, flying around and really just trying to chase perfection.
From the outside looking in, both on the offense side of the ball and the defense side of the ball, it feels like this team, this Michigan team specifically, is playing with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. Maybe a bit disrespected by the preseason AP poll, not ranked inside the top 25, underdogs in a handful of games. Do you feel that kind of chip on your shoulder energy in practice and in meetings so far this season? Are you guys kind of rallying around maybe some of this preseason disrespect?
Yeah, that was one thing going into the season that we knew we had, is that chip. We weren't ranked. We didn't really care about it, but because we knew how good we were. And, now we're 14th in the country. And one thing we're trying to emphasize is we're not losing this chip on our shoulder. Especially, we saw the spread of this Wisconsin game. They're supposed to win by 1.5. And, I mean, that chip is still there. You look on Twitter, people are still bashing us. So, I mean, we're coming for everything, and we're not out to prove anything to anyone. We're just proving it all to ourselves, and because we know how good we are, we know how good we can be. We just got to go out there and execute and get the job done.
That's such an interesting component of today's game that I think is under discussed, because so many, college players, college teams say, oh, we don't look at that. We don't look at the internet. We don't look at spreads, all that stuff. But I mean, it shows up, and I'm glad you admit, like, hey, we did see the spread. We do know we weren't ranked in the bidding, preseason. Now we're 14th. How do you, because I don't think blocking it out is all that possible. How do you maintain, or I guess adjust to all of this internet fodder that happens on Twitter and so forth?
Yeah, for sure. It's hard too, especially if you don't delete your social media. I mean, you're going to see it. And if guys tell you they don't see it, then, and they do have social media, then they're lying to you. Because it shows up right there. But really, I just don't put a lot of weight into it. You see it, it adds a little fuel to the fire. But at the end of the day, you're not playing for Las Vegas Sportsbook, or you're not playing for people who make AP top 25 poll. Like, the numbers don't really matter to us, because like I said, we know what we got. We know our talent that we got. As long as we execute, we're gonna keep on winning ball games, and so that's what we plan to do.
Last one for you, Aidan. I'll let you go. I really appreciate the time. Preview the University of Wisconsin for me. I know you've already turned on the tape. What are your early impressions of this offense, and maybe specifically this offensive line?
Yeah, they're a great team. Obviously they're 1-2. The record really doesn't show for it too much, but it's going to be a physical game in Madison. Really for our team, if we stop the run, I think that's when we're going to see a lot of success. But first, we just got to stop that run and just be really stout up front, and I think we'll have a lot of success.
Aidan, this was a fantastic interview. I wish you the best of luck for the rest of the season, specifically at Wisconsin. Thanks again for the show.
All right, thanks, Austin.
That's going to do it. Jam-packed show, 2022 Draft Board, CFB Week 4 review. The next show, a little mailbag, a little trivia. We're also going to preview every NFL game and give some prospect primers. Make sure you tune into that. Also follow PFF_tailgate on Twitter. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Until next time, Austin Gayle, Mike Renner, producer Mike Quinn, David Safaro, Max Chadwick, Tailgate.